Brian ran down the sidewalk, her bare feet slapping against the warm pavement as the sun dipped low on the horizon. Her breath came in sharp bursts, but she didn't slow down. Her wide eyes stayed locked on the stroller that was barreling downhill, its tiny passenger rocking dangerously. The street was alive with noise, the hum of evening traffic, the clatter of distant voices, the occasional horn. But all of it was muted in Brian's mind, replaced by one singular thought: reach the stroller. Sweat rolled down her face as she pushed herself harder, her legs burning from the effort. The stroller veered closer to the busy intersection, a white sedan accelerating toward it, oblivious. Brian lunged forward, stretching her arm out as far as it would go. Her fingers just brushed the handle. With a final desperate leap, she seized it and yanked back hard. The wheels skidded, and the stroller jolted to a stop. The baby inside began to wail, but it was safe. Brian dropped to her knees, panting, her palms pressed to the scorching asphalt. The car screeched to a halt mere inches from where she crouched. For a moment, everything was still except for the baby's cries and Brian's ragged breaths. Then, a woman in a sleek navy suit and heels rushed forward, her face streaked with tears. She scooped up the baby and held it close, trembling with relief. "Oh my God! You saved her!" The woman sobbed, looking at Brian as if she were a guardian angel. Before Brian could respond, a tall, muscular man in a black suit emerged from a nearby car. His eyes were sharp, scanning Brian as though measuring her worth. He nodded at the woman, who quickly returned to the glossy black SUV waiting nearby. Without another word, they drove off, leaving Brian kneeling in the street. It wasn't until the murmurs of the gathering crowd reached her ears that she realized people had been watching. Some clapped, others murmured words of praise, but a few, older ones, gave her looks of suspicion. "Brave girl," someone said. "But I hope this doesn't bring trouble," whispered another. Brian slowly got to her feet and made her way home, her legs aching. The familiar, cozy house stood at the end of the block, paint peeling slightly but warm with life. Inside, her mother, Lisa, was cooking dinner, the smell of spiced chicken and rice filling the small kitchen. Her older sister, Maya, was sitting at the table scrolling through her phone. "Brian, why are you all sweaty?" Lisa asked, turning from the stove, a wooden spoon in hand. I saved a baby," Brian replied breathlessly. Lisa's eyes widened. "What do you mean? Are you hurt?" Brian quickly recounted the story. Lisa hugged her tightly, pride and fear mingling in her expression. "That's amazing, baby, but you have to be careful. People don't always." She trailed off, her worry showing. "Of course they just left," Maya muttered, putting her phone down. "Rich people only care about their stuff, not who helps them." Brian shrugged and pulled something from her pocket. "I found this," she said, holding out a small golden charm shaped like a crescent moon, engraved with an intricate symbol. Lisa's face changed. She took the charm and examined it closely. A shadow passed over her expression before she forced a smile and handed it back to Brian. "Keep it safe," she said. "It might be important later." That night, the local news played faintly on the television. Grainy security footage showed Brian running after the stroller. "A young girl's bravery saved the child of wealthy entrepreneur Victor Carrington," said the news anchor. Carrington, known for his real estate empire, has yet to comment. A picture of Victor flashed on the screen, a tall man with sharp features and piercing eyes. Lisa's face went pale, and she gripped the arm of the couch tightly. "Mom?" Maya asked, noticing her reaction. Lisa quickly stood up, brushing it off. "I'm fine, just tired." But Brian wasn't convinced. She stared at the charm in her hand as she lay in bed that night, turning it over and over. Something about her mom's reaction told her there was more to this than she understood. The next morning, a sleek black limousine rolled down their quiet street, stopping in front of their house. Brian peeked through the curtains as a man in an expensive suit stepped out, his movements smooth and deliberate. He looked up at the house with a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes before ringing the doorbell. Lisa froze in the kitchen, her hands still wet from washing dishes. "It's him," she murmured under her breath. "Him who?" Brian asked, but Lisa didn't answer. She wiped her hands and went to the door. Maya stood, arms crossed, watching cautiously. When Lisa opened the door, Victor Carrington stood there, his polished smile almost disarming. "Good morning, Mrs. Green," he said smoothly. I'm here to thank your daughter for her bravery. She saved my little girl's life. It's an act that deserves recognition." Lisa stiffened but stepped aside to let him in. He walked into the living room, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. He turned to Brian, who was still by the window, and gave her a small, calculated smile. "You must be the young hero. Thank you." Brian nodded nervously, unsure what to say. Victor gestured, and a man carrying a briefcase entered behind him. Victor opened the case, pulling out an envelope. "This is a token of my gratitude," he said, handing it to Lisa. Inside were documents. Lisa's face turned pale as she scanned them. At the top of one was the same symbol as the charm Brian had found. "This is," Lisa started but couldn't finish. "A house in a gated community," Victor said smoothly. "Safe, secure, no more risks like what happened yesterday. It's my gift to you." Maya stepped forward, her skepticism clear. "Why would you do that? Nobody gives something like this without expecting something in return." Victor's smile didn't waver. "Your sister saved my child. That's all the reason I need." Lisa hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know if we can accept this. It's very generous, but—" "Please, think it over," Victor said, his tone friendly but firm. "I'll leave you to discuss it." He looked at Brian one last time. "You're a special girl. Don't forget that." As he left, Lisa sat heavily on the couch, staring at the papers. Maya stood near the window, watching the limo disappear. "This doesn't feel right," she said. "He's hiding something." "Mom, who is he?" Brian asked, her voice quiet. Lisa didn't answer, but her face was shadowed with worry. Over the next few days, Lisa seemed distracted, jumping at small sounds and double-checking the locks. Maya grew more suspicious, especially when movers arrived unannounced to start packing their things. "Mom, we haven't even agreed to this," Maya said angrily. "Why are you letting them do this?" Lisa sighed. "Because this neighborhood isn't safe anymore. If this house gives us protection, maybe it's worth it." The new house was as grand as promised, but it felt cold and sterile. Cameras watched every corner, and the security guards patrolling the streets gave the place an oppressive air. Brian explored the basement one night and found a locked box bearing the same symbol as the charm. Curiosity gnawed at her, but she couldn't open it. Lisa's unease deepened. One evening, while the family sat in their new living room, the doorbell rang. When Lisa opened it, Victor was there again, his smile sharp. "How are you settling in?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Lisa stiffened. "What do you want?" "Just to ensure everything is in order," Victor said, his tone smooth but edged with something darker. "You understand, Mrs. Green, we wouldn't want any old complications to resurface." Lisa's face turned pale, and Maya stepped forward. "What are you talking about?" Victor ignored her, his eyes locked on Lisa. "You know what I mean. Let's keep things simple. Stay quiet, enjoy the house, and everyone stays happy." After he left, Maya exploded. "What was that about? Mom, what aren't you telling us?" Lisa hesitated before finally admitting the truth. Years ago, she'd worked for Victor. She'd discovered something she wasn't supposed to, evidence of fraud and corruption. When she tried to leave, he'd threatened her. "I thought it was over," Lisa said, tears in her eyes. "But now he's trying to make sure I never talk." Brian pulled the charm from her pocket. "This has to mean something," she said. Together, the family examined it and discovered a hidden compartment containing a microchip. "This could be it," Maya said. "Proof of everything." That night, under the cover of darkness, they snuck into the community's surveillance center to access the chip's contents. The files revealed bank transfers and documents tying Victor to illegal activities. But before they could leave, footsteps approached. They barely escaped back to the house. The next morning, sirens blared as police stormed the community. Victor was arrested, but his parting words to Lisa were chilling. "This isn't over." Back in their old neighborhood, the family finally felt free. The house was small and worn, but it was home. As Brian sat on the porch holding the charm, she smiled. They'd faced a giant and won. For now, that was enough.